Welcome back to another episode of the Chris and DJ Show. I am Chris Shanafelt. He's DJ Moore. And this is a special edition. It's going to go on for about 35 minutes as the Chicago Bears, as you can see, here's the Sun-Times, here's the Chicago Tribune. The Chicago Bears have hired Matt Nagy to be their next head coach. This was a process that went very quickly. Just 8 days ago, the news became official that the Bears fired John Fox and we're going to go on to a new direction. And here they are now, naming Matt Nagy, the former offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, as their new head coach. 2 years of offensive coordinating experience, is the guy that has come from the Andy Reid coaching tree, as they call it. Andy Reid has had many assistants and offensive and defensive coordinators from his coaching staff move on to the head coaching ranks in the NFL and have had a lot of success at it. And hopefully Matt Nagy is another one of those guys. DJ, overall thoughts when you first heard the news that Matt Nagy, the former Chiefs offensive coordinator, was the next head coach for the Chicago Bears?
The first thoughts was, who is he? You know what I mean? And when you say coaching tree, it's not. I mean, it's like a young tree. Like it's, and when you kind of when you see that it's a new coach, you want to kind of look him up and say, okay, who is this guy? And you just the day, and he.
He's a guy that started off as an intern for the Philadelphia Eagles back when Andy Reid was over there. So this is a guy that really has risen up the ranks.
I mean, risen up the ranks. I mean, fast, like Cardi B rap music fast. Like it is electric. And I looked up this story about the Eagles, and I think he was working with them, and then they wanted to sign him as a backup quarterback when Cobb got hurt, and then they denied that, and then he kept coaching, and all of a sudden he's where he is now. So he was in the right place at the right time, coaching with the right coaches, and he got up on the Andy Reid wing, and he's essentially getting credit for something Andy Reid has built. He's getting credit for, I guess, lucking up a little bit and them finding Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. But I hope he does a good job. But like, you just don't know who he is even as an offensive coordinator. I mean, in 2008, he was part of the Pomona Cougars or something, offensive coordinator in high school from 2008 to being a head coach in 2018. That is super fast. But I guess the one person you can kind of compare him to, and I think the guy who kind of opened it up for everybody, is really young. He started back in 2008 coaching as well. So it's essentially he's saying that, hey, listen, he may be one of those guys. An offensive-minded guy. We talked about it before. They needed an offensive-minded guy to bring, Trubisky up. But Pace had to have confidence in him. Your job is dependent on this guy that you essentially don't know much about.
Yeah, and I mean, all signs. I mean, Ryan Pace, obviously, this is the guy that he sold on because now, obviously, his general manager career with the Chicago Bears is both tied to Mitch Trubisky trading up and picking him number 2 overall, and now Matt Nagy, who he goes out and hires as his second head coach. A lot of people don't believe that John Fox was totally his idea. Whatever. Matt Nagy, okay. It's definitely all on Ryan Pace.
Hey, it's your idea. It ain't no disguising it now.
Yeah, no doubt.
You already know you in cover 2. You better get out of it. I'm about to throw a touchdown. Yeah.
And today, Matt Nagy, he took full responsibility of the play calling, specifically in the second half for that Kansas City Chiefs and Tennessee Titans playoff game. He said it was his problem. He was calling every single play, and he hopefully, or he says he will learn from it. Know that.
Well, the thing is that's going to, I think, frustrate you a little, or a call turn. I think when you get in is doing everything against you in the first half and you can't stop them, and a good defensive coordinator like a Dick LeBeau and like all these other defensive coordinators is going to figure out your offense. Not only are they figuring out your offense, but they're figuring out an offense where you have dynamic players like Kareem Hunt, like a Tyreek. Chicago, are you going to have that? Are you going to have those players in place? Now, you got Mitch Trubisky, which I'm assuming you sold Pace on. Hey, listen, he's going to be the next Alex Smith, is what I'm assuming. Because if you want him, he has to sell it to you. You got Howard, who is, to me, is just as good as Hunt. Probably not so much out the backfield, but he is really good. You got Tyreek Cohen. Now, is he your new Tyreek Hill? Is he going to be more of a receiver? Is he going to play that role? I think you're probably missing the dynamic tight end that you need probably to run that offense that they was running, the tight end motion and things like that. But it's a lot of athletic tight ends. Out there in the NFL, they'll probably have to go and get one of those. And, we got to show up, the offensive line. I think they were banged up a little bit. But that's what I'm assuming he sold them on. I mean, that's the only thing I can think about. Like, when you come in the office, when you really your resume is not full, the bottom of the sheet is kind of half empty, and you're like, what's going on? Hey, listen, I'm going to make my team, the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to bring that, to Chicago, and I believe that y'all have the pieces for it. That's the only way I could think, because I know when I was reading up on it, he was saying, man, it's good when everything clicks, and I was thinking to myself, like, Pace sounded like he was at a bar, and they was drinking, and they was having a bro, man. Like, man, this ain't us going out and hanging out every week. This is a man that needs to do a job, and for some reason he feel real confident in him. Hopefully he comes in and gets the job done.
Well, I'll say this, and it's always easy for being your first press conference as the team's new head coach, but certainly won over the press conference. I mean, it was a breath of fresh air with some of the type of answers and how in-depth he was going in with some of his answers and how honest he was. I mean, he took full responsibility of the play calling that occurred against the Tennessee Titans with the Kansas Chiefs. I know that at the end of the day,
what would you do?
Nothing. That means nothing. All right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what would you do? Hey,
and don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna pull. I'm not gonna say, you know what. He went 2-12. He 2-14. But you know what? Those press conferences, man, he sure did a good job in those. I'm not saying that. At the end of the day, you have to win your games, and he does seem like a guy that does control respect. I was able to talk to one of the former offensive players on the Kansas City Chiefs earlier today, very briefly, and he had nothing but good things to say about him. And, a 39-year-old head coach, it does kind of seem like this is kind of the trend that the NFL is going towards, is giving some of these younger offensive-minded guys a shot. As you mentioned, Sean McVay in Los Angeles. I mean, Bears fans are hoping and dreaming Matt Nagy could be the next Sean McVay.
Yeah, and that's what you want. When we was talking about, what's the old Bears coach name again? I forgot his name that quick.
John Fox?
Yeah, Fox. Goodness gracious. It was like, man, it happened quick. When we was talking about him, we were just saying that, hey, listen, you need an offensive-minded guy. You got these young quarterbacks who are coming out, and they're performing faster and faster, and you're trying to find that guy. I know he talked about the whole route. It's just not about one player, but essentially it is. How can I get this young guy to develop? And he assuming you have to sell your GM on, this is your prize draft pick. Make him look good, which makes you look good, which makes us look good. Do it next year, because if not, it's going to be a lot of questions. Because the Bears fans, listen, we waited patiently, we seeing it, drafted another guy. A coach is gone. This your guy. Let's see it. McVay did it. Guess what? You got to do it too.
And it's a lot's going to be expected out of him year one. Now he won't get fired after year one, but seeing how Sean McVay was able to turn around the Los Angeles Rams in year one, and how Jared Goff was able to turn into at least a decent, if not above average quarterback this season after everybody was writing him off just a year ago.
Yeah, well, this is what I would say about the Rams. Jeff Fisher probably said a really good spot. They had really good players, and then they traded away to the Bills to get a couple other players, Woods, and those guys have stepped up and made some plays. Now, Goff did make a big jump, but also last year, Gurley was awful. This year was the opposite. He's probably going to be go from awful to MVP.
He would probably get my vote.
Yeah, so you had different defense with Donald and Quinn, and those guys were good cornerbacks, good safeties. Like you had a good defense as well to go along with McVay in that offense. And those guys, I think, good cornerbacks, good safeties. Like you had a good defense. I know. It messed me up a little bit. I think that Bears have a defense. Not, I don't think it's as good as the Rams. They have some pieces on offense, but I don't think those pieces are as good as the Rams. I wouldn't take Howard over the Rams, the young Rams running back. I wouldn't do that. Even though I like Howard, I like the way he plays, I just wouldn't. So, is he going to have the talent that McVay kind of walked into? Which, I don't think he will, unless in the offseason, Pace start to go and, get some young guys. Because right now you got a receiver, was it Wheaton, who's not really proven he can run. That may be good. You got Kevin White, who in 3 years seemed like he caught about 6 passes.
Hey, what do they say?
I think he is.
Availability is the best ability, and those two guys have got to prove a lot.
Yeah, but I think Kevin White does have the ability, but it's just like you're just not available. So you got to really go out and get to searching for some receivers that even have a chance, for him to throw it to anybody.
Yeah, no doubt about that. One thing, and I don't mean to keep on bringing up the Los Angeles Rams and the success that they've had, but one thing that they really did well in is, again, something you said, the free agents, the trades that they made. Obviously hitting on draft picks in the NFL draft. I mean, they're hitting on these acquisitions that they're making. That you don't see too many mishaps, or you didn't see too many mishaps with the Rams a year ago. And the players that they brought in, and that's something that the Bears are going to have to learn to get better at, and that right there is something that falls on General Manager Ryan Pace, and we'll see how or exactly how much input Matt Nagy has in the 53-man roster and all that. But Ryan Pace has made it known that that 53-man roster control is all his. But it would be smart to hear from your coaches as well, and I think he'll be open to that. That's what it kind of sounds like. What was talked about a little bit in these meetings leading up to the official hiring of Matt Nagy. Now, before I have some audio to play from Aaron Leming from BearReport.com. He covers the Chicago Bears. Before we get to that, how important, DJ, is it for the Bears to hold on to Vic Fangio? I know he's not the only defensive coordinator out there. I know he's not the only good defensive coordinator out there. There's quite a few names out there. Mike Pettin actually is now off that list, though. He was just hired to be the Green Bay Packers defense coordinator, which could bode well for the Chicago Bears in hopes of retaining Vic Fangio. But how important is that? I mean, Vic Fangio has built something pretty solid here. I mean, a top 10, top 12 defense, and some of the players that he's been able to bring in, and some of the players he's been able to kind of help improve. Prince Mukamara came in here on a 1-year deal. I think he's made himself some money this offseason, whether it's here in Chicago or somewhere else. Kyle Fuller had a really big fourth year of his career. And then you go on and on, the rookie Eddie Jackson. I think it's pretty important for them to hold on to him. I'm hoping they could hold on to him. And, that was something that Mike Nagy, the new head coach of the Chicago Bears, said that they also hope. They're going to work on trying to Vic Fangio back here to be the defensive coordinator. He was already one of the highest paid defensive coordinators last year, making $2 million, which is a lot for a coordinator. Obviously, I think he's well worth that, and you see with the work that he's been able to do with the Bears defense, turning that around after Mel Tucker, the Mel Tucker, Mark Trestman era. But we'll forget that. Anyways, very impressive run here by Vic Fangio. Hopefully he can come back. How important is it for you that they retain him?
I think it's very important. But with that being said, I think it's more important that they retain Amukamura. You can't do anything as a defensive coordinator, without the players. And in the NFL, you're going to need those type of players on the outside to secure your defense. Because without a cornerback like that, what can I do? Can I blitz or can I play man? But when you have those pieces in place, well, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can take chances here. The cornerbacks, Fuller, Mukamara, and then Jackson and what is it, Amos?
Yeah, Adrian.
Yeah, so yeah, and those type of guys are actually, able to make plays for me. I think it's important to keep, Venjo because you're familiar with the defense. You don't want everything to be new on offense, new on defense. And what's unique about it when you hire a coach that hasn't been around the league that long, he probably hasn't built that many relationships with that many defensive coaches. Because normally you get a new coach, we talked about it before, you get a new coach, and then everybody comes in, you got everything in place. And with him being such a young coach, he doesn't have everything in place. And lucky for him, Vanjo is there, and, hopefully he can, when teams want you, you become a hot commodity, and, hey, your services are up for sale. But even if they do, have to find somebody else, I think, the more important thing is actually the actual players, because the players are going to make the system work. Coach.
Yeah, and you know what? Something I actually just recently found out. I was listening to ESPN 1000 here in Chicago. It was the David Kaplan show, and something I did not know is, and like you said, a lot of these guys, especially younger guys, maybe they don't have so many connections, and maybe it's important that they could retain some of these coaches. Sean McVay last year with the Los Angeles Rams, in his interview, they asked, what's your plan for the defense coordinator position? Oh, I'm going to bring in Wade Phillips. He hadn't even talked to Wade Phillips about that at all yet. He went on it and said that and sold that in his interview, and luckily enough, it worked out for him. He was able to talk to Wade Phillips afterwards and was able to bring him in as their defensive coordinator, and obviously seeing what they're doing. A lot of people are hoping the Chicago Bears could replicate that. Now, DJ, I'm going to play some audio real quick from a good friend, Aaron Leming, from BearReport.com. Give him a follow on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. It's about 6.5 minutes worth of audio. Afterwards, we'll give our thoughts on what Aaron Leming has to say, and starts off with his thoughts on the new Bears head coach Matt Nagy, and wraps up with the possibility of Vic Fangio being retained as defensive coordinator, and then what's up with our good friend John Fox? What's the chances we see him back coaching anytime soon? So I'll go ahead and start that up right now.
I think it was, I don't know if I'd say it's a surprise, because I think when you look at the overall candidates, I think really Ryan Pace wanted somebody that aligns somewhat with his age, but was also kind of a young and up-and-coming offensive guru kind of player, or kind of coach. So I think when you look at the situation, it makes a lot of sense, especially with him being free. He has a history with Trubisky, kind of a small history, but he identified Trubisky as his number one quarterback in the draft. They pushed to trade up to 5 to get him before the Bears traded up and got him at 2. And he's maintained contact with him during the season. So I think that's all worth keeping in mind here. But I think when you really look at the way that he was able to run that Kansas City offense versus what the Bears can do, I think there's a lot of similarities there. Obviously, a guy like Travis Kelce, I don't think you can really comp to Adam Shaheen. At least not yet, but I mean, look at Tariq Cohen, and I think Tyreek Hill can comp in certain ways. Hill's a little taller and probably a little faster, but they play that same kind of role. I think Trubisky has the same athletic traits. I think he has a much higher ceiling than a guy like Alex Smith. But I think when you're looking at the RPOs that they're going to be able to run, getting him out of the pocket, moving him around, taking off from the pocket and getting yards, I think that overall the entire offense can really run, I'd say, really well with a guy like Trubisky there. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people kind of thought DeFilippo was going to be the guy, including myself. A lot of people in Philly thought the same thing. But I think Nagy makes a ton of sense. He was my number 2, coach. We don't know much about these guys, so we really have no clue what goes on in the interviews. But I would say it was enough to impress Ryan Pace, and I really admire the fact that he was able to move so quickly on this and now they can start landing coordinators and really getting things going. I think when you look at it, I mean, obviously the lack of experience, I mean, he's been an offensive coordinator for 2 years. He's really worked himself up, is definitely somewhat of a concern. I think it's always going to be, even with a guy like Sean McVay last year. I think a lot of people have a revisionist history and kind of don't remember that Sean McVay wasn't really looked at as some all-star hire. A lot of people wondered, like, why are you hiring a 2-year-old offensive coordinator that doesn't have that much experience? So I think you really have to look at the whole entire situation here. But I think a big thing to keep in mind, and this is something that Bears fans really need to hold on to, is Andy Reid has a very, very good coaching tree. And he came out, I think it was back in November, and said that Nagy was the best, potential head coaching candidate that he has ever coached. And I think that's a big thing when you look at some of the guys that he's had that have gone on to be successful head coaches, Ron Rivera, Doug Peterson. I mean, the list goes on and on. And as far as the play calling goes in the second half, I don't know that he was actually calling the plays. There's been a lot of talk that Andy Reid took the play calling back over for the playoff game, whether that be for control to make sure that, he got what he needed to get done, or whether that was for the fact that he knew that Nagy had, 2 interviews the next day, whatever it may be. I don't know that we're really ever going to find out who was calling the offensive plays that day. But the one thing I will say is you look at the 5 games prior where they went 4-1, they averaged almost 30 points, 30 offensive points a game. They averaged over 400 yards a game. And you look at that and you look at how well they did. They were, like I said, they're 4-1. I mean, they really turned things around after, really collapsing. And I think that's what you should really take more out of versus one half of football that may not even have been called by him.
Final question for you, Aaron, then we'll let you go. And that is Vic Fangio. It sounds like Matt Nagy is all in on bringing Vic Fangio back. But is that what Vic Fangio wants to do? As of today, 12:01 a.m., he officially became a free agent. He's on the market, and it sounds like that's the Green Bay Packers' number one choice for their new defensive coordinator opening is Vic Fangio. They interviewed Mike Pettin, the former Browns head coach, the other day. But I believe it was Ian Rappaport out there that said that it sounds like Fangio is the Packers' number one priority for that defensive coordinating position. What do you think are the Bears' chances of getting Vic Fangio back?
I think it's an interesting situation because you look at the Packers and you saw they had one bad season and all of a sudden they're turning things, upside down in the front office, firing people from the coaching staff on both sides of the ball. And I think that there's some talk out there that McCarthy may not be on stable ground. Obviously, the Packers are a good team. If Aaron Rodgers is in there, good chance they're going to win 10, 11, 12 games. But I think when you look at this situation, I think it comes down to one thing. Vic Fangio hasn't been happy the last few years in Chicago. Now, I think a lot of that had to do with John Fox. I think there was a clashing of heads. Fangio has a certain way of wanting to run things. John Fox was a defensive-minded head coach. So I think there's definitely some things there. I do think that them bringing him in for the head coaching interview like they did, at least give him a shot. Give him and Ryan Pace a chance to sit down and talk what their long-term goals are, what their views are. I think that's going to help. But, I mean, overall, you look at the situation, and I think we're going to know a lot more by today. I don't think I'm not going to give a definitive answer one way or another. I think it's kind of 50-50 at this point. There's not many options out there right now for him, at least at the time being, until they start hiring other head coaches, and I don't think he's going to wait that long. But I do think it's going to come between the Bears and the Packers, and, if the Packers are willing to make that move, then that's something worth keeping in mind. But the Bears are going to be willing to pay him. I mean, he's one of the top paid defensive coordinators in the league as is. The Bears will be willing to pay him more. And, I think they're going to make a good run at him, but this really comes down to Vic Fangio, and I don't know if anybody really knows what he's thinking right now.
And quickly, what's the status on John Fox? Is it a possibility we could see him back on the sidelines as a defensive coordinator last year after years and years and years of being a head coach?
Yeah, it sounds like that's definitely a possibility. There's been a few reports going around from different sources basically saying that he's looking to let the smoke clear. I can't remember exactly who said it, but he's looking to let the smoke clear and then, see what he could pick up as far as a defensive coordinator job, maybe an assistant. It sounds like he wants to keep coaching, but I think at this point in time, his head coaching style especially is not going to be well received by many. I think the conservative old school approach is just kind of out the window. But I think he still has some value, at least for a few years, as a coordinator for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it wouldn't surprise me if the team picks him up.
All right, so there's that. Again, that was Aaron Leming, BearReport.com. Does some great work over there. Aaron Leming NFL on Twitter. DJ, kind of a lot to digest there. Now, obviously, we brought up, Vic Fangio and the chances he goes to Green Bay. About an hour and a half ago, Mike Pettin, the former Browns head coach, was hired as their defensive coordinator. This interview with Aaron Leming was recorded earlier this morning. But that doesn't mean Vic Fangio is coming back to Chicago. Now, it does make their chances a lot better, but nothing guaranteed just yet. Again, it was just this morning, 12:01 a.m., he officially became a free agent and could speak to teams on his own. Sounds like Aaron really likes this hiring, though, and is open to seeing how Matt Nagy does as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Again, he said it was his second choice, just behind John DeFilippo, the quarterback's coach over in Philadelphia. Did you take anything away from that conversation with Aaron Leming?
No, I think he said almost exactly what I said with Tyreek Hill and the Tyreek Cohen comparison, and Alex Smith comparison. Other than him saying that, Alex Smith, Mitch has a higher ceiling. I guess everybody has a higher ceiling than Alex Smith for some reason. But honestly, if he can get him just to perform like Alex Smith, I think the Chicago Bears would be fine with that. If not turn the ball over and throw the ball down the field here and there and get it out, get it outside to your playmakers. I think this could work. But like he said young up and coming coaches, and that's what it's about right now. And if you're old, I guess you old and outgoing, either you young and upcoming. So you got to, it's a lot of questions. It's just still a lot of questions that you won't know. You won't know, can he command, locker room? Can you really, motivate, grown men to do their jobs? Can you adjust at halftime? Because, only evidence we got of you adjusting is, I guess, the bad adjustments. Was it you? Was it not? You was under Andy Reid. I know when Andy Reid giving you the play calling, I was in Chicago whenever Lovie Smith had to give the play calling up to Marinelli. It was like, he was still calling the plays, though. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the head coach. Like, all I got to do is just say, yeah, do this or whatever. Or you look at me and say, hey, should I do this? So now you don't have anybody to hold your hand. So you're out in that water by yourself, and, can you swim or, you're going to drown. So it worked for McVay, and we're going to see if it worked for old Nagy.
And yeah, he did confirm that. Matt Nagy did, that he will be calling the offensive plays for the Bears, as Sean McVay is doing for the Rams, as John Gruden will be doing for the Oakland Raiders. Matt Nagy will be calling the offensive plays for the Chicago Bears. And you know what? One player I'm really excited to see in this offense is somebody that's been brought up a number of times already today, Tariq Cohen, the running back, little gadget guy. Small school guy, and nobody really knew about him coming in, and then all of a sudden, week 2, I think it was an ugly overall game against the Buccaneers, but he really exploded onto the scene. Maybe even week 1 against Atlanta, he may have had a quick impact as well. DJ, this is really a fun player to watch, and honestly, it might be high praise. No way I'm comparing him to Devin Hester at all, but when he has the ball in his hands, he's kind of the first player since Devin Hester was on the team that I go, there's a chance he could take this one back.
Oh, yeah, he is a very exciting player. Whenever you look at his stat line, he from rushing to receiving, and then he had a lot of, kickoff and punt return yards. He can do everything. So if anybody is excited, he has to be ecstatic because he can literally look at the Chiefs game and say, listen, whatever he did, I can do it. Whenever I meet with the coach, I can do that. I can run routes, I can do this, I can do that. He's going to come with quick, short motion, and essentially he's going to be a receiver, and I'm sure he can catch. If you back there catching punts, you can catch the ball. So I would just tell Coach, I'm more than a running back. I can do everything that you did with, Tyreek here. I can do that same thing. So, he should be excited. Trubisky should drag plays and crossing plays and different formations to get the defense confused a little bit, or have the offense know that, hey, okay, they're in man, they're in zone. Easier for the quarterback. So I think this offense should be excited, and if they can get Fangio back on defense, this could be one of those teams that go from worst to first.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be tough in this division, obviously with Minnesota, who's still playing in the playoffs this week, and then of course Green Bay. Anytime that you're going up against Aaron Rodgers, I mean he alone, could make 3-4 Pro Bowlers on that roster. Couple more things, and then we'll wrap this one up, DJ. How important is it to you, at least? I don't. I mean, there's a bunch of different backgrounds. There's a bunch of different backgrounds. And we see that with a lot of different coaches. Hell, I mean, again, the Bears once brought in a coach from the CFL to coach this team, and brought a bunch of coaches from the CFL added onto his roster. But Matt Nagy, I mean, he's never played in the NFL. Like you said, he almost got a shot, but he did play at the University of Delaware, had a standout career there, and then had a long career in the AFL, the Arena Football League, had a lot of success there. 374 touchdowns to 55 interceptions, over 18,000 passing yards. I mean, so he knows the position. Again, a former quarterback coach, former offensive coordinator. We've seen what he's been able to do with Alex Smith. Having him throw a 26 and 5 interceptions, 26 touchdowns and 5 interception season, 4,000 yards. No doubt about it. This guy knows how to coach quarterbacks. He knows the quarterback position. How important is it for how important is it for a coach, or is there an added level or an added is there anything you could add to being a coach if you have that playing the history of playing the game at one point?
You say there's something that you can add to it?
Yeah, I mean, is there something more you can bring? I mean, can the players, can you relate to players more if?
Yeah, I think if you've played, I think you just relate more to the players. Even probably one of the best coaches Lovie Smith, I think he played, but he wasn't any good. I don't think at football. He liked to say he was, but I don't think he was. I threw him a ball once, he moved out the way. I said, yeah, he can play. But Rob Marinelli, when you see him, he's kind of slowly walking everywhere, and you can tell he's never played, but he commands, respect from everybody. Little guy walking around, and he's, coaching guys like Peppers and those guys on the defensive line. Like he was impressive. But initially, you always look at that. I think most players look like, okay, did they play? Do they understand what I'm actually going through right here? Like it looks really simple, but it's really, really tough. So I think him being a quarterback and playing in situations, playing for a long, even if it was the Arena League, which is to me is probably a little bit faster, a little bit closer, a little more. He can kind of take the quarterback through the steps. I'm sure he can still spin it. He's 39. I'm sure he gets out there and try to up a little bit. So he's a kid at heart. He's a lifer, man. He's played football all his life. That's all he's ever done. As soon as he got done playing football, they tried to sign him again. He wanted to come back, and then it just didn't work out. Or else he'll probably still be playing right now. So I think he understands not only the position that quarterback is, but I think he understands, football as a whole. When you're a coach, you just can't just know what quarterbacks do. You got to know what the defense is doing, what DBs are doing, what linebackers do. So when you become a coach, man, you gotta do it. Gotta do it all out. Only person I feel bad for is probably his wife, because he gonna be in the film room all day, every day. And even when I was a coach in high school, man, a coach would look at you and tell your wife you're gonna be home late. When you head coach of the Bears, tell your wife you might not be home at all.
Yeah, definitely going to be logging in those hours, no doubt about it. Let's wrap up the show, DJ. Overall thoughts, I think it's a bit high, or it took me a little bit to buy into. I didn't know too much about him as like you. But learning more about him, and as more comes out about him, as you know, I'm not the biggest Alex Smith fan, but I mean, what he was able to do, and yeah, Alex Smith got there, and sure Andy Reid was still there, sure Matt Nagy was there, and Doug Peterson was the offensive coordinator, and we've seen towards the end of his San Francisco career that he was, or maybe he did turn the corner and maybe turn into a better quarterback than he was earlier in his career. But the coaching it has to be somewhat of a credit to the coaching as well. So I am excited that, the big time, explosive, exciting offense of the Kansas City Chiefs and their offensive coordinator. Although it was a little bit of a letdown and a little bit of a bummer getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs of the Tennessee Titans last weekend in the wild card round. What they were able to do all season long and, kind of turn these players, some late round picks. I mean, Tyreek Hill, a fifth, sixth rounder. Kareem Hunt wasn't a high pick. I mean, third, fourth round, but he's not somebody you expect to lead the league in rushing year one. That's for sure. I mean, to get a lot out of these guys, especially in the later rounds, is something that the Bears need, and the Bears need a lot of help. And I think Matt Nagy is, number one, you have to be a fan of the quarterback. He's a fan. He believes in Mitch Trubisky. So I think the Bears are heading into the right direction. I know there's a lot of hype and a lot of excitement and a lot of good feelings around the Bears right now. So you're going to hear a lot about that. But at first, initially, I don't think this was a very the fan base, at least, which I'm sure the whole organization as a whole could care less about what they think about at times. They weren't very happy with this hire. They want the big names. They want the John Grudens of the world or the Bill Cowhers, you name it. But I think people, if you settle down and kind of look more into, do your research and look at what he's been able to do and see how he's risen up, from starting as an assistant or an intern to an assistant to a quarterback's coach and so on, to now being the head coach of an NFL franchise. And I like the direction that the Bears are going. You had to go after an offensive guy. You want to put your future in the hands of a young quarterback like Mitch Trubisky, like they did, trading up one pick for him to get him number 2 overall. We'll see how this goes, but overall, I like the hire. I'm excited. Now let's hope they could lock up Vic Fangio, because I think that's very important for the defensive side of the ball. And let's see if they could have a season next year like the Los Angeles Rams had this year.
For me, overall, I'm excited, that he's an offensive guy. That's it. I'm not excited that it's Matt Nagy. You know what I mean? I don't know who he is. Beat the drum so we, blew in the face and said, hey, he coached Alex Smith and he did all this. No, that was Andy Reid. You don't get credit for that. So going forward, he's an offensive guy. That's about it. I'm probably with the fans. I'm kind of worried a little bit as well, because if this goes south, it could be going south for a long time.
Let me ask you this: could it get any worse than it was under? Obviously it was not nearly as bad as it was with Mark Trestman, but the John Fox stage, it was time to get rid of him. It was getting pretty stale, and it became pretty clear that you probably weren't going anywhere next year if John Fox and that staff, especially offensively, were going to be coming back.
Well, I would ask you this, okay? Would you rather have Mark Trestman or would you rather have Fox?
Oh, Fox.
Okay.
Trestman is the NFL coach.
So would you? Well, that's my thing though. Like, how can you say that you have Matt Nagy because he's just another offensive minded coach with little experience?
You're right.
So when you put it like that, it's like, oh, we're gonna do this again. Now, when it works out with McVay, and then it works out with Peterson and his other assistants, McDonald, doing good. Are there other people who've been in the NFL probably a little bit long who deserve the shot? Maybe so, but he has a shot, and he's an offensive guy. I'm excited that he's an offensive guy. Chicago needs offense, even though I just feel like their team is just better when they're, defense driven. You just have to have enough offense, but he's an offensive guy. Let's see what he can do. But other than that, I just don't know the cat, man. Like nobody does. When you pick up, okay, he just started. Okay, let's see what happens. So he'll add, this year coming on to Wikipedia page. So he's killing it, man.
Hey, that's exactly right. We'll see how he does as a new head coach. They had the press conference today. The official announcement was yesterday. New head coach Matt Nagy, head coach of the Chicago Bears, former offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs. And with that, DJ, that'll do it for tonight. Just a quick, short show breaking down and giving our thoughts on the new head coach, Matt Nagy, and what we think of the newest head coach of the Chicago Bears. Of course, special thanks to Aaron Leming for giving us a dial in earlier as well. Any final words? Any words to Bears fans, DJ? They need to hear from you.
Give the guy a chance. Let's see what he can do. It may not happen year one, but I think with football and with players and with grown men, sometimes things take a little bit of time. And I know in Chicago, sometimes you want it. You want it right now. So give him a couple years and see what he can do. And other than that, get you a dashiki, man. Yeah, get that.
All right,
get you one of them, man.
That'll do it for tonight. As always, thanks for tuning in, everybody. And all right, until next week.